Today I'm going to fix a part to a stove. This is a Viking spider grate, and as you can see, this finger broke off of the end here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reattach it, but I'm not going to do the normal thing. This is cast iron, okay? So I went to a blacksmith because they're about the only ones that could fix a piece of cast iron. It's a very involved process when they do it. As you can see, the finish on this is new because I powder coated this. I sent it to a customer. It got broken into shipment on the way there thanks to UPS, and now I've got to reattach this piece or replace the grate. These grates are about $65, and that's fine. However, since I repowder coated it, the finish on it might be a little bit bluer or a little bit browner than what the finish on the other grates are because I did it with a powder coat. So with black is either going to be a blue black or a brown black, or leaning towards a yellow, which makes it a brown black. So I would end up having to, if I bought another grate, replacement grate, all intact, it cost me about $65. I'd have to strip it down. I'd have to repowder coat it to match the other ones. I'd have all told into it. By the time I did sandblasting, by the time I applied my own powder, I have my own powder coat process. By the time I did all that, it ended up running me about $100, $120, somewhere in that range, and a whole lot of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick fix. I could put some JB Weld here and put it there and just hope for the best, and hopefully it's going to work. But I don't really see that being a solution here, especially since that's kind of a thin piece that I'm applying this to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill into this piece, I'm going to drill into that piece, and I'm going to insert a dowel pin that is 3/32 in diameter, 3/32 by 3/4. So that's going to be the process today. The trick is getting the pin in straight and to tolerance. Now, I'm not going to do a super precision job here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to insert the pin in one end, and I'm actually going to have a little bit of room on either side of the pin so that I can put JB Weld in there with it, because the JB Weld is going to harden to a finish. It's going to be as hard as steel anyway, since it has steel in it. So I'm going to put it in there, and it's going to have a little bit of yaw, just enough yaw to where if I don't get the holes matched up exactly, they're still going to match, and this thing's going to look, really nice. And then there's going to be a little bit coming out at the edge here, and then I'll end up having to refinish that. But that's the plan. I'm hoping that it's going to work. I don't know whether it's going to work, but I figured I'd bring you along on this journey just to see what's going to happen with this. Yes, so I did mention the pin. So this is the pin that I'm going to be using. As you can see, it's just a little, piece of metal here. It's basically wire. And as I said, I'm going to drill. If you'll notice, there's a taper to this. So, the bottom part is thicker, top part is thinner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this closer to the bottom part, and I'm going to drill in there. I'm going to get this in there, insert it in there, and then I'm going to drill a hole likewise in there, and they'll both join together, and then there'll be JB Weld along this seam and that seam also to join them together. But it's really going to be the pin that's going to be giving it the strength to hold together for the long term. My drill press is tucked in the back of my unit amongst a bunch of clutter, so I don't know how clean those shots are going to turn out, but I wanted to give you a preface of what I was going to do. I've got a machinist chuck here. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to chuck this up in here, and let me just put this in the middle of the shot. I'm going to chuck it up. I've already checked to see if this thing is square this way, and I also know that the drill press table is square to the actual bit. So when the drill goes down into whatever it goes down into, I know that it's going to be going in to where it is square, whatever it goes into. Now, if the thing that I put in there is out of square, is not exactly square to that, then that's going to be an issue, but I'm going to make sure of that. And one of the ways that I made sure was I actually angle measured this to these edges here, and as I figured it was square. So I know that if I get this in here just correctly, and this up here, it'll actually be square facing up, because this is where I have to drill, okay? Now, the one tricky part is that I've got to get it to where, you know, it's not going to yaw on me when it goes into that chuck. Okay, so I am going to show it out here before I go in there. I'm going to attempt to shoot, images of me actually boring it, but I just wanted to make sure I had everything set up so that it could actually be seen cleanly on camera. So this part here is going to be on the face of the drill press, on the table itself, and I'm going to put this in. Okay, now this has a little registry pin here that goes into the cooktop and here. So I need to make sure that nothing is against that, because that's going to throw it off. So I'm using these little pieces of wood here because I want to make sure that this does not come into contact with any metal, because it'll scratch the finish that I put on there. I mentioned before I put a powder coat finish on it. So I'm just going to go ahead and, I'm actually going to go like this here, because I know. Let me get this up here. I know it'll be. Yeah, I know that it'll be pointing straight up, and I can verify that. Actually, it's a little bit out of touch here. So I'm going to probably have to figure out a way to get this in there so it's pointing straight up, and this part is pointing as straight up as possible so that I can drill straight down into there. It's going to go straight into the center of this at the meaty part here. I don't want to go up into the weak part. I want to go into the meaty part here. Like I said, this is cast iron, so it is a little bit fragile, and I'll drill the hole in there, okay, but I'll make sure that this is square in that chuck before I actually start drilling, because right now it looks like it's a little bit out of square. If you look at it, it's a little bit out of square, possibly. Well, I'll just measure it and verify that, and then I'll go ahead and chuck it up and then do my first bore. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bore it so I can put that little registry pin in there, and then I'm going to locate the pin where the hole has to go into this piece here afterwards, and then slide that over. And I'll probably have to make this hole a little bit bigger, just so I have a little bit of play to get this to match up evenly where the fracture is. And the JB weld that I put in there, I'm going to use JB weld for this because it's good for up to 1100 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm going to fill it in with JB weld. The pin's going to go in there. I'm going to make sure it matches up to this, and then I'm going to let it sit overnight, and it'll all be back together. So this should work. I'm hoping it works anyway. Otherwise, I'm going to have to do alternative number 2, which is going to be fairly expensive to do. I measured I actually put it into the chuck and have wedged it here to get the angles right. So I checked it with an angle finder. Now the table is on a slope, so it's a little bit off on this side. So what I've got here is I've got the slope about 2.5 degrees off. Okay, but when I put it against this part here, that is also 2.5 degrees off. I don't know if you can see the scale, but it is. And then on the back side, you have to measure, you have to measure 90 degrees to each other. So on the back side, I measured the scale here. It's exactly on, and then I measured the upright, which is also exactly on. So I know that this is square in a chuck. So I'm going to take the chuck now, I'm going to put it on the drill press, I'm going to drill into the fatter part of this finger here, and I will have a hole that will be square where I'm going to put the registry pin in there. So this one here, I decided I'm going to probably try to go to the exact size and then press fit it in so that it's a nice tight fit. And then on the other side, I'm going to make that one a little bit loose so I have a little bit of yaw to work the part so I can match it up to, the fracture marks. Before I actually go in and drill, I wanted to point out some things here. So the dowel pin is 332, so that's 3/32 of an inch. So I'm going to start with a pilot hole that is a 1/16 of an inch, so it's a little bit smaller. I don't know if you can see that there, but it is a little bit smaller in diameter. Then the next drill that I do will be the 332, just so that I make sure that I have the hole precise. and then I'm going to press it into there. I'm going to go about halfway. So this thing is 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to go about halfway. I'm going to drill a hole about halfway. I'm going to press it in. Then whatever's left over is what I'm going to put into the top there. Once I have it pressed in, it doesn't matter how deep I go into here as long as I go deeper than what the rest of the remainder is sticking out. And I'll stick it in the hole. I'm going to have, as I said, I'm going to bore it out a little bit bigger than 332. So I'm going to probably go to 7/64 or something like that. Or I'll probably go to a numbered drill index at that point, just so I have a little bit less of a yaw in there. And then I'm going to insert it into the hole. It's going to have the adhesive in there. Adhesive is going to be here, and then everything, I'll let everything dry overnight, and it should come out as expected. I'm hoping anyway. So that's the plan. So as I said, this is 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to drill about halfway down. I'm going to limit how deep the hole goes into. So I've got a scale on my drill press, that tells me how deep I'm going into. But I'm probably just going to tape off the drill so I know how deep to go, and then that'll be my drill mark. And I think I've covered everything here. So now I've got this thing chucked up and ready to start my initial hole. When I go in, I've slowed the drill speed down to slower than what it should be for that drill, actually, just so I'm cutting a little bit of time. It's right in the center at the bottom piece of there. I've got this clamped to the base of the unit, so that I know everything's square. Like I said, I know the table's square because there's marks on there and everything is square. I know the drill is square to the table because of the way the drill press is set up. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn it on and start my initial hole. This is the second drill that I'm going to be using. Now I have little depth gauges that go on here and clamp on here, but lately they've kind of been moving up the drill, and I don't really want to risk that, so I just taped it off to where, to the depth that it actually has to go to. So just to make sure, that everything's good. It's only going to be one drill, going in there like that. So that's why I've taped it off like that. Just going to go ahead and set this aside. And now I'm going to go ahead and start the drill so I can start to do the actual hole. I'm going to start the hole slow because it's going to want to, once the drill bit touches the slope of this, it might want to travel down to the lower part because that's by nature kind of what they tend to do. So I'm just going to start cutting the hole very, very slowly, making sure that it's not traveling. And then once it has created an imprint, then I'm going to start to drill more aggressively. So let's go ahead and do it. Hang on a second here. I'm missing my check key. Let me go this way here. Okay, so we're now in motion. Very, very slowly. Just trying to put an imprint on there. And I think the drill may be out of center to the chuck, so let me make sure here. Hang on, I'll come back on camera once it's centered. Okay, so now we're centered. Are we rolling here? Yeah, we're rolling. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and go down with it. Very, very slowly. Just to start to cut the hole, the first part of the hole. Like I said, I'm doing this because I don't want the drill to travel. In fact, there we go. Just want to start to get the cut going here. See a little bit of meat coming up now. just a little bit. All right, so you can see a little bit of that stuff coming out. So now that I'm in the hole, I'm going to go a little bit more aggressively. And I'm hoping that this here won't touch the... well, I'll take this little ball off here so it clearances the grate. There we go. First hole, doesn't matter how deep it is. It's got to be deeper than the second hole. Because the first hole is not going to, the part's not going to press into the first hole because it's smaller than the second hole. Okay, looks like we're in now. Okay. So now I have a hole in more or less the exact center of this piece here. I'll take this off and kind of show you there. That's what we got there. So, it's good enough for government work. Like I said, I'm gonna actually have a larger hole in the other piece so that I can have a little bit of yaw to play with, so I can match the fracture marks on the piece. But that's my starter hole. I'm going to drill a second hole, then I'm going to press the pin in, and then I'm going to bring the other piece in here and drill it to a larger diameter so I have some movement so I can get these two pieces lined up. So the one part about doing it this way is that if you are going to drill a piece, you have to have a drill press, because you got to get that hole 90 degrees, square to the part that you're putting it into. And that's what I've taken every precaution to make sure that that's a square hole going in, because otherwise something's not going to match up. I mean, it's not going to be an exact fit anyway. That's why I have to do the second hole a little bit larger. So you kind of got the odds working against you if you're not using a drill press to do that particular step. So if you're fortunate enough to have a drill press at home, by all means, it's a good thing to do it that way. I mean, it's the only way to really get it done correctly. And now I'm going to go ahead and do the second hole to the depth that I showed you on the tape. I'm not going to show that hole being drilled. The next hole that I drill will be in the actual piece that broke off. And then I'll press the pin in there. Okay, so I've placed the drill bit in the hole just to make sure that we're as square as we can possibly be. So when I check it here, it does appear that it is square because there's an equal distance. Whoops, hang on, let me get this straight with these sides here. There's an equal distance all the way up, and I also check it in this direction. So I check in both angles, going 90 degrees to each other. So I check it from this angle as well, and so it does appear to be square to the eyeball anyway. Whether the exact square might be 1 degree off. But remember, the hole in the other piece, and this piece here, is going to be slightly larger than the hole in there. That's going to be a press fit. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to press the piece into there, and hopefully it'll be a friction fit. If it's not, I'm going to have to JB weld it in there and make sure that it sticks. This is not a really super heavy piece. It's not a critical piece. It's not a weight-bearing piece. So it doesn't have to be super duper strong or super duper accurate. It just needs to be accurate cosmetically so that, it goes on there and it doesn't just break off just by placing it, by lifting it by this piece. I just want to make sure it's just going to be that secure. It's not going to be a super strong piece. Well, actually, it might be a little bit stronger than the piece was originally, just because it's going to have a piece of steel going through it. So there's a possibility that it'll be slightly stronger than the other pieces, but I just want to get it to where it's secure. That's the basic idea here. Okay, so I've got the hole in this piece now. I've got the piece that goes in the hole. It's actually not a press fit. It actually fits. There's no tolerance really. Well, there is a little bit of tolerance, but so it's not an exact press fit. which is fine. Basically, I mean, this is a registry pin. It's designed to hold two pieces together, and this is going to be the strongest part of it. So the pieces are going to be, glued at the face with JB weld, okay? And then they're going to be joined, and then this is going to make sure that if there's any side tensioning or side torsion, that the piece is not just going to snap off. It's basically going to act as a spine for these two pieces once they're joined together. It's going to join to that, okay? Now, this piece is done. I've verified that this is drilled straight into this, okay? And, it might be off by 1 degree, possibly to the eyeball. It appears that it's straight, and that's fine. As I said, this hole is going to probably end up being larger than that one anyway, but I'm going to start with a hole the same size. And the hole that's the size there is actually the size of the material. I think it was 332 is what the deal was. So I'm going to drill into this same size, then I'm going to drill a little bit wider if I need to adjust, okay, either this way or that way. So I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, okay, now I'm going to try to guess where the hole has to go in here, okay? I'm actually not going to guess. What I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this piece. I know that this hole is basically in the center of this, but I don't know how centered it actually is, because when you're talking thousandths of an inch, it's probably off a few thousandths of an inch. So what I'm going to do, instead of guessing, is I'm actually going to transfer where this hole is to this piece. And the way I'm going to do that, Spider-Man paint. Okay, you go to the dollar store, you get a little bit of this water, this water-soluble paint, and you can mark it with this. The way you do it is you take the paint, you dip a toothpick in there, you dip the paint into there, you load this hole up with paint, okay? You join the two pieces, you take it out of the chuck, and then you turn it upside down and you allow it to mark the opposite side. That's the way I'm going to figure out where I have to drill this piece. And I'm going to drill this piece a straight, 90 right into that piece, just like I did into that piece, using the same methodology. So I'm going to go ahead and start doing that, and I'll come back on camera when I'm ready to do it. All right, so I've dabbed the paint in there. I couldn't use white because the white was all dried out of that paint set there. So much for the getting paint from the dollar store, okay? So I've made it to where the paint is pretty ready. So when I turn it upside down, it should be able to flow out and mark onto the face of this piece right here, okay? So now I'm going to go ahead and join the two pieces. I'm going to just loosen the vise here because I'm not going to need that anymore, okay? I'm going to join the two pieces. As if they were when they're finished, as they'll be when they're finished, okay? And now I'm just going to turn the piece upside down into place, holding the piece in as it'll be when it's finalized. Hopefully it dripped down in there. Flip it back up. And I've got a little bit of a mark, but I'm going to probably have to do that again, make sure that paint's a little bit wetter than that. But you get the idea. That's the way I'm going to mark it. And then once I have a mark on here, then that's what I'm going to use to drill my hole. So I'm going to go ahead and get the paint a little bit looser, a little bit more wet, so it flows out onto here. And then I'll come back on camera to show it to you, and then I'm going to go ahead and proceed with drilling. Okay, there we go. So the hole is marked. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start drilling in the center of that hole. I'm going to level it just like I did the other piece, and then I'm going to drill into there. And I'm going to go a little bit further than I think I should, and that will be enough to to put the pin in there. I'm going to start it at exactly the same size. I'm going to start with the smaller size first, the pilot size. Then I'm going to go out to the 332. Then I'm going to try to see how it fits, and if it doesn't fit exactly, which I don't suspect it will, then I'm going to start boring it out larger, probably a few thousandths at a time. So I'm going to end up going to the numbered drill bits to do that, just so I could get a pretty tight tolerance in there. Okay, so now I've drilled both pieces here. So So this one here is drilled, and that one is drilled. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to see how close the match is. I'm just going to eyeball it. I mean, I know it's not going to be exactly up because, you know, of the way it was done. I could have actually done a match, but the way to really truly match it is to, you know, put this on there and drill all the way through this down to here. And that takes an extremely long drill bit. And, you know, it's just not worth doing it that way because I'm going to have to put in some adhesive anyway. I decided that I am going to enlarge both sides just so that the dowel pin is going to be submerged in the adhesive also, which is going to be JB Weld. So to do that, by enlarging it, it's going to enable me to deal with any yaw that could possibly be in there once I put a pin in there. Here's the pin. The other thing too that I'm going to end up doing is, this thing is pretty smooth, so what I'm going to end up doing with that is I'm going to probably lightly abrade it with some abrasive so that it has, you know, it's not quite as smooth and it has a gripping surface for the adhesive that I'm going to use. I'm just going to very, very lightly do that. I'm not going to show you how I do that because, you know, basically, I mean, I'm just basically going to rub it against an abrasive so that there's just little pit marks in here so that it can grab into here. And it fits very tightly into the holes that I've drilled because, you know, the drill bit was exactly this size. I was hoping it was going to be slightly undersized so I could press fit it in there. But, you know, 332, this size is 332. I drilled at 332. I did it on a drill press. Oh yeah, by the way, I wanted to point out, the reason I did it on a drill press was so that there was no yaw in there. Because when you do it by hand, you know, you think you're drilling in straight and everything. Well, what you're actually doing is you're drilling in, but your hand moves, and then you end up getting a little bit of yaw, and that's how the hole gets out around. And it does get out around, whether you believe it or not. And the reason it does is because your hand is not steady. When you do it with a drill press, it's a precision drilling process. You know, sometimes you'd have to use lubrication. In this case, you don't because it's cast iron. But sometimes you'd have to use lubrication. And you're relatively assured that you're going to get a straight hole with no yaw anywhere in it. And it's going to be true to size if you've observed the drill press, the speed of the drill going in there, and you've used lubrication, all the things that you need to do to make sure that that drill is to spec when it's done. So, as I said, I drilled it 332, the dowel is 332, there's probably about 2/1000ths of an inch maybe play in there. I can't really tell if there's play in there because I can't really feel it, but there might be 1/1000th or two in there, you know, which is fine. And I'm still going to have to size it out. I'm not going to go up to the next fractional drill size because the next fractional drill size in this index is 7/64, which is quite a few thousandths up the road. So I'm going to end up probably the 332. That's about 93 thousandths of an inch. So I'm going to go from a number 42 here. If you look at the drill index, I have all the number drills and all the fractional drills and all the letter drills. I'm going to end up going from right now it's at a 93, so that's about a number 42. I don't know why it won't focus here. There it is. Okay, number 93. I'm going to probably go up about 2 more drill sizes, possibly 3 to the next larger drill size, but I think I'm going to go, well, I'm going to start it at 1. I'm going to see if I can get it straight that way. I'm going to drill both sides so that I have yaw in both holes, and I'm going to do the minimum amount of drilling that I need to get that to line up straight. So now I've drilled it, okay? So now what I'm going to do is I've placed the dowel pin in here. I'm just going to put this on and see how it fits. It's probably going to be slightly off because, like I said, I figured I was off about 1 degree. I didn't have my glasses on that day, so I couldn't exactly tell you exactly how far I was off. I wasn't too worried about it. I was just worried about getting it close to center as I can because I'm not doing a precision job here. I'm just doing a basic, you know, how to put it in job, and I knew that I was going to put some adhesive in there anyway. Thought I was only going to drill one side out, while I'm going to end up drilling 2 sides out. So now I'm going to go ahead and put this over the dowel pin. And we're slightly off, so not too bad though, really. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I don't think I drilled deep enough. Okay, I'm going to have to drill a little bit deeper than what I did because it doesn't quite fit up against there. And then I'm going to drill it out. So that'll be my next steps. I won't need to show that because I've already showed the basic drilling process. But once I get it all together, once I get it to where I join these two pieces, that's when I'm going to come back on camera. All right, so now I had the board a few sizes over to get it to get everything to match up, up and down, side to side, which is fine because, like I said, I wanted to make sure I had epoxy around the pin. So now what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to stuff that with epoxy, stick this in the hole, okay, and stick the other part of the hole. Real basic stuff. So I'm just going to go ahead and put some epoxy in that hole. Okay, I'm also going to epoxy the brake itself. And if you notice, I set it upright in the vise here, and the reason I did was because there's a setup time for the epoxy, and I wanted to make sure that this thing was securely, was secured so that it's in an upright position, because that's going to be the way that I can assure that the two faces of this broken part are going to join up and go together well. Any leftover epoxy I'm going to wipe off the sides. Okay, so I've epoxied the hole now, and I can't find my hole here. I kind of blocked it with the epoxy. Here it is. Okay, I'm just going to make sure I've got enough epoxy in there to take up the room. So I'm just going to kind of dab the end of this with epoxy. Like I said, any spillover I'll wipe off. I don't want it to end up on a finish because I powder coat finish this this piece. So there's that. And now I'm going to go ahead and put epoxy on the top part of the dowel, so I can make sure it fills up the top hole. There's that. Might be a little bit sloppy, but that's okay. Now I'm going to join them up. And where is it? It's right there. And there it is. So the way I figured it, it's not going to have much of a crack in it once I'm done with it. I'm hoping it's not. And whatever the crack is left there, I'm just going to treat with some high temperature paint because it's not a very critical point. The heat doesn't really get on the outside of these burners, it mostly gets on the inside. So these fingers here are going to be mostly what's affected by the heat from an oven. And I'm just going to sit here for 20 minutes, let it set up. That's the cure time that's the setup time for this epoxy. You can kind of see the epoxy spilling out the side there. So I'm going to wipe that off, and then I'll get it smooth, and then I know that there's enough epoxy in there now to be able to grip the pins and to be able to finish the job. So that's the end of the video. Thanks for watching, and I hope you learned something. Yes, okay, so I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, okay, so is this guy really going to sit there and let this thing go for 20 minutes? Now, this JB weld that I have is a little bit older, so the setup time is probably going to be closer to, like, I would say 30 or 40 minutes, just because the older the tube gets, the longer it takes for the active or the catalyst to cause the two parts to solidify. So, like I said, I mixed it on this little board here. I don't know if I said that, but anyway. So, to help it along, I'm just going to use the heat gun a little bit and just go ahead and heat, all sides of it. And that should speed up the drying time a little bit, or at least the setup time a little bit. It doesn't actually cure for, I think it's like 24 hours or something crazy like that on this stuff. So, just kind of go ahead and run around it. And when I come back on camera, I'm going to have the piece in one piece so I can show you that it's all done and that it's solid. like I said, it's not going to be the perfect fix. I mean, the perfect fix is having it iron welded, but you know, $50. Well, no, I was quoted $60 to iron weld this piece, and I just don't see investing $60 into a piece when I could just go get a brand new piece. And the reason I didn't get a brand new piece is because I needed to match the black that I put on here, because I did a refinish job on the entire stovetop. So I just wanted to make sure that I was going to have something that was going to hold. Didn't need to be super strong because this is not a weight supporting structure, and that's basically it. So I'll come back on camera once it's all put together. I'm going to dab it with a little bit of that heat resistant paint just along the crack there, and it's good to go at that point. So now this part here is dried, and it's very, very solid here. Now if you notice, you know, where I joined it, I put the pin in between the two pieces, and where I joined it, there's a little bit of a hairline crack here, but it did match up extremely well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide that crack, because the JB weld is gray, and the black, you know, the powder coat finish that I put on this when I originally finished it is black here. So, you know, gray versus black, obviously you have a fracture line. It shows obvious signs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little bit of heat paint. This stuff's good up to 1,000 degrees. You know, one of these grates is going to get maximum 250, maybe 300 degrees. I've already shaken the can pretty well, and I'm just going to touch it up. I'm going to use a little, you know, Q-tip, just dab it on, and I'm just going to try to blend it as well as I can, so it's not obvious that it actually was touched up. So I think I'll start on the inside first, just to make sure that that process is going to go well. And I can always wipe it off with my finger if I had to, or a piece of cloth or whatever. So I'm going to go ahead and spray a little bit of this in here. Oops. Okay. Get the tip wet, and then just go ahead and try to work. Let me see if I've got this on camera here. Oh, maybe I can bring it a little bit closer. Just try to work it in here. So just dab it a little bit. You know, once it hits the, I suspect once it hits the JB weld's gonna cover it pretty well, because like I said, it's gray versus black. Don't have enough on there. There we go. Okay. So then I'm just going to go ahead and just kind of swab it so that it just blends in. There's a little bit of gray area right there. Again, just kind of swab it. There you go. And you get the idea. So doing it that way is going to make it a little bit less obvious. It's going to be a lot less obvious than it having a hairline fracture there with that stuff in the middle. I'll do the same on the other side, and then I'll just call it a day. It'll actually be, it's wet right now, so it's hard to see, it's hard to tell how well it's going to blend, but it should blend pretty well, because this paint, I've matched this up to this before, so it blends pretty well, and it's going to make it to where it's kind of a seamless fix. And that's basically it. This thing is as strong as can be. You know, I can wiggle it pretty well. I could even lift it up by this part if I had to, even with the vise on it. So that JB weld holds pretty good. Do the same on this side, underneath, on top, and on the other side, and then just call it a day. Let the paint dry, and I'll ship it off. So thanks for watching the video, and I hope you learned something. All right, so I wanted to show the final outcome here. So as you can see there from the inside, this is where it's actually at right here. You can't really tell, you know, looking straight down at it, can't tell. There's a little bit of a hairline crack there maybe. You know, if you look really close at it, yeah, magnified. But it really turned out well. Now, you know, there's six burners, so there's 6 grates on this stove. They're all right next to each other. So on the outside here, it's a little bit evident that, you know, there was a repair made. But you're going to have a grate right next to it, so you're never going to see that side, you know, unless you put this on the outside. But even then, you're still going to have the countertop, you know, on the outside of it. So it's a very non-apparent fix, and it's strong. It's strong as the stock unit is, and it's going to hold up through the heat, because it's you know, that the JB weld's good to 1100 degrees. The actual coating of that heat paint that I put on there, which basically is just going to stick to the JB weld. It's probably going to flake away from the coating that I put on here. So, but it'll stick to the JB weld. And the reason I didn't want to, do a traditional fix here is because I would have completely had to strip that grate and then repowder coat it after fixing it, and after having it welded, and after paying $60 to have it welded. So this is a pretty nice alternative. Like I said, it's not a weight-bearing part, and it looks really super clean. So it turned out really well, and it's going to be good. I mean, it's going to last for the lifetime of that stove. Chances are the people will drop it one time before it actually, if anything ever happens to it again. But it's probably not going to break on this side because there's a rod going through there that's a nice strong piece of material that's going to hold up. It's going to hold up through heat, and it's going to hold up through even exerting weight and force on it. And basically the only force that can be exerted on there is inwards. Even if you lift it up, I mean, you'll be lifting up the weight of the grate, but that's going to hold. So nice fix, and thanks for watching the video.